Most millionaires are broke. I know that sounds insane, but stick with me for the next 40 seconds because what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you see wealth. Right now, there are 24 million millionaires in the United States. Sounds impressive, right? Wrong. Because here's what nobody tells you. Remove their house from the equation and that number crashes to just 6 million. That means 75% of millionaires aren't really millionaires at all. They just own expensive boxes they live in. And if you think you're building wealth the right way, you might be making the exact same mistake. So smash that subscribe button right now, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why looking rich and being rich are two completely different games. Let's get one thing straight from the start. The definition of a millionaire is simple: someone whose total net worth equals $1 million or more. Net worth means everything you own minus everything you owe. Your house, your car, your investments, your baseball card collection, minus your mortgage, your credit cards, your student loans. Basic math. But here's where it gets interesting. Some people love to argue with this definition. They'll say things like, well, you can't really count that because you'd have to sell it, or that's not liquid so it doesn't count. But that's not how net worth works. Net worth doesn't care about convenience. It doesn't care if something takes 3 months to sell or 3 minutes. It only cares about value. What those people are actually describing is something completely different. They're talking about what's called an investable asset millionaire. That's someone who has at least $1 million in liquid, investable assets, money you can actually use without selling your house or turning your life upside down. We're talking cash, stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, mutual funds, assets that can realistically support your lifestyle and generate income. And once you understand this distinction, everything changes. Because when you look at the numbers through this lens, the Millionaire Club suddenly looks a lot less crowded. According to recent data, about 7% of American adults are millionaires when you count everything they own. But when you strip away the house and focus purely on investable wealth, that percentage drops like a stone. Only 2 to 3% of adults actually have $1 million or more in liquid assets. Think about that. 3/4 of millionaires only hit that milestone because their house went up in value, not because they built real financial independence, not because they have a massive portfolio throwing off dividends, just because real estate prices climbed. And this is where the trap begins. Because home equity feels like wealth, looks like wealth, shows up on paper as wealth, but it doesn't act like wealth. You can't spend it at the grocery store. You can't pay your electric bill with square footage. And you definitely can't retire comfortably on appreciation alone. Now, don't get me wrong. Owning a home isn't a bad thing. Building equity takes discipline, consistency, and time. It's an achievement worth celebrating. But here's the brutal truth. Home equity is not usable money. It's frozen capital. It's wealth you can see but can't touch. Not without making major life changes. Not without selling, refinancing, downsizing, or taking on debt. It's potential energy, not kinetic energy. And this is the exact point where the difference between looking rich and being financially free becomes crystal clear. Let me paint you two pictures, and you tell me which person is actually wealthy. Picture number 1, a couple in their early 60s. They own a beautiful home worth $750,000, paid off completely, no mortgage. They also have $250,000 sitting in savings and retirement accounts. On paper, they're millionaires. The math checks out. But in reality, what does their life look like? They're still working or living off modest pensions. They're budgeting carefully every month. They stress about healthcare costs, home repairs, rising property taxes, insurance premiums. They look successful from the outside, but they feel financially fragile on the inside. Now picture number 2, someone renting a decent apartment, no property ownership whatsoever, but they have $900,000 invested in a diversified portfolio and $100,000 in cash reserves. Same net worth as the couple with the house, but a completely different life. One has equity locked in walls and a roof. The other has freedom, flexibility, and cash flow. Technically, both are millionaires, but only one can realistically stop working tomorrow and maintain their lifestyle. Only one has true financial independence, and that's the distinction that most people completely miss. Net worth tells you what someone owns. Investable assets tell you what someone can actually live on. And once you see that difference, you start to understand why so many people who appear to have made it still feel stuck, stressed, and trapped. Because when the majority of your wealth is tied up in your home, you're not wealthy in any practical sense. You're anchored, you're asset rich and cash poor. and this dynamic becomes painfully, brutally obvious when people hit retirement. Millions of Americans retire with net worths over $1 million and still struggle financially. Why? Because most of that value is sitting inside four walls that don't generate a single dollar of income. Sure, they might have Social Security, maybe a small pension, perhaps a modest retirement account. But their biggest asset, the thing that makes them a millionaire on paper, is draining cash every single month. Property taxes don't stop when you retire. Insurance doesn't get cheaper. Maintenance and repairs don't go away. Roofs leak. HVAC systems break. Plumbing fails. And all of those costs hit harder when you're on a fixed income. This is why you see older homeowners living in houses that clearly need work. Peeling paint. Overgrown yards. Outdated interiors. It's not because they don't care. It's because equity doesn't pay bills. It doesn't fix broken dishwashers or replace worn-out carpets. Now, yes, they do have options. They can downsize and pocket the difference. They can take out a reverse mortgage. They can sell and rent. They can refinance and pull out cash. Home equity does provide flexibility and options. But here's the key point that everyone misses. All of those options require action. They require disruption. They require life changes. They require converting the house into money. Until you do that, equity is just potential. It's a number on a balance sheet. It's not spending power. Compare that to someone who spent decades quietly investing, maxing out their 401k every year, buying index funds consistently, reinvesting dividends, building a portfolio designed specifically to generate income. They might not own property. They might rent their entire lives, but their money works for them every single day. That portfolio throws off dividends, interest, capital gains. It grows while they sleep. And most importantly, it can support their lifestyle without them having to sell anything or change their living situation. This is exactly why communities focused on financial independence care far less about total net worth and far more about two specific things: liquid net worth and passive income. The real question isn't how much are you worth on paper. The real question is, how long can you survive without a paycheck? How many months or years can you maintain your lifestyle if all earned income stops tomorrow? That's the true measure of financial freedom. Someone might own a business valued at $2 million, impressive on paper, but if that business can't be easily sold and they only have a few $100,000 in liquid assets, they're still completely dependent on that business continuing to operate successfully. They're trapped. Another person might have no business, no real estate, but a well-structured $1 million portfolio that quietly covers all their expenses. One looks impressive at dinner parties, the other is free. One gets compliments, the other sleeps peacefully at night. This is exactly why the massive rise in home prices over the last decade has created an entire generation of accidental millionaires, especially in cities like San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, Denver, and pretty much anywhere with a decent job market. People who bought modest homes 10 or 15 years ago suddenly crossed the seven-figure threshold without changing a single thing about their financial behavior. Their house just appreciated, and now, on paper, they look wealthy. But that doesn't automatically equal financial security. In many cases, it creates the exact opposite problem. It creates people who are asset rich but cash poor, still working full-time, still stressed about money, still living paycheck to paycheck despite technically being millionaires, all because their wealth is trapped in an asset they can't easily access. The mistake happens when people start treating home equity like it's the same as having money in the bank. It's not. A house is a place to live. It can be a powerful component of your overall net worth. It can provide stability and security, but it's not a replacement for liquid income-producing assets. You can't pay medical bills with drywall. You can't fund your retirement with granite countertops. You can't buy groceries with curb appeal. Real financial stability comes from balance. It comes from owning a home and building liquid assets, having equity and having income, security and flexibility. Without that balance, you end up house rich and life poor, wealthy on paper, constrained in reality, living in a beautiful cage. Let's talk about what real wealth actually looks like, because it's probably not what you think. The truly wealthy, the people who've achieved actual financial independence, aren't the ones showing off. They're not posting photos of their cars. They're not flexing their watch collection. They're not broadcasting their net worth on social media. In fact, you probably wouldn't recognize them if they sat down next to you at a coffee shop. They drive normal cars. They wear normal clothes. They live in nice but not extravagant homes. Or they rent. And they do this because they understand something fundamental that most people miss. True wealth is invisible. It's quiet. It's private. It sits in investment accounts, compounding year after year, generating cash flow that gives them options, freedom, and peace of mind. The millionaires who don't count their home, the investable asset millionaires, they represent roughly 2 out of every 100 adults, and they all share certain characteristics. They tend to live below their means. They prioritize savings and investments over consumption. They avoid lifestyle inflation, even when their income grows. They understand the difference between assets that appreciate and assets that depreciate. They think in decades, not days. And most importantly, they focus relentlessly on building streams of income that don't require their active participation. Dividend stocks, rental properties that are actually cash flow positive, businesses that run without them, index funds that grow steadily over time. These are the tools of real wealth building. Here's what's fascinating. The path to becoming an investable asset millionaire isn't complicated. It's not sexy. It doesn't involve crypto gambling or day trading or finding the next hot stock. It's actually kind of boring. It's about consistently saving a significant portion of your income, investing it in diversified assets, and letting time do the heavy lifting. Max out your retirement accounts, build an emergency fund, invest in low-cost index funds, avoid high-interest debt, repeat for 20 or 30 years. That's it. That's the formula. No secrets, no hacks, just discipline and patience. But here's why most people don't do it. Because it requires delayed gratification. It requires saying no to things you want now in exchange for freedom later. It requires driving a paid-off Toyota while your neighbor finances a BMW. It requires living in a modest home while your colleague stretches for the biggest house they can afford. And this is where the psychology of wealth gets really interesting, because we live in a world that constantly pushes us to look rich rather than be rich. Social media has made this worse. Everyone's curating their highlight reel. Everyone's showing the vacation, the car, the watch, the house. Nobody's posting screenshots of their brokerage account steadily growing. Nobody's bragging about hitting their savings goals. Nobody's flexing their boring index fund portfolio. So we get trapped in this cycle of trying to keep up appearances, trying to signal wealth and success through consumption, all while undermining our actual financial security. We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like, and we call it success. The truly wealthy play a completely different game. They understand that every dollar spent on looking rich is a dollar that can't work for them. They understand that the goal isn't to appear successful, it's to be free. And freedom comes from having options. It comes from being able to say no. It comes from not needing the next paycheck. It comes from building a financial foundation so solid that market crashes don't panic you, job losses don't destroy you, and unexpected expenses don't derail you. That's real wealth. Not the number on a net worth statement, not the value of your house, but the size of the gap between your expenses and your passive income. So, how do you actually build this kind of wealth? How do you become one of those 2 or 3% who are millionaires without counting their home? It starts with a mindset shift. You have to stop measuring success by what you own and start measuring it by what your assets produce. You have to stop optimizing for appearances and start optimizing for cash flow. You have to get comfortable being underestimated. Let people think you're less successful than you are. Let them wonder why you're still driving that old car. Let them question why you haven't upgraded to a bigger house. Because while they're judging you, you're building something they can't see. You're building freedom. Step 1 is brutal honesty about where you actually are. Calculate your real net worth, including your home. Then calculate it again without your home. That second number is your investable net worth, and it's the one that actually matters for financial independence. If that number makes you uncomfortable, good. Use that discomfort as fuel. Step 2 is setting a real target. How much money do you need invested to cover your annual expenses? A common rule of thumb is the 4% rule. If you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually and have it last through retirement, you need 25 times your annual expenses invested. If you spend $40,000 a year, you need $1 million invested. If you spend $80,000 a year, you need $2 million. Do the math for your specific situation. Step 3 is increasing the gap between what you earn and what you spend. This is where most people get stuck because they think it's about deprivation. It's not. It's about intentionality. It's about spending money on things that genuinely improve your life and cutting ruthlessly on things that don't. It's about realizing that the fancy car doesn't actually make you happier, but having 6 months of expenses in the bank absolutely does. It's about understanding that the bigger house comes with bigger stress, but the growing investment account comes with growing peace of mind. Step 4 is automating everything. Automate your savings. Automate your investments. Make it so you never have to think about it or decide. Pay yourself first, invest consistently, and let the system run in the background while you live your life. Step 5 is staying the course when everyone around you is losing their minds. When the market crashes, keep investing. When your friends are buying new cars, keep investing. When social media makes you feel like you're falling behind, keep investing. When you get a raise, increase your savings rate instead of your spending. This is the part that separates the people who build real wealth from the people who just talk about it. Because building wealth isn't about being smart. It's about being consistent. It's about doing boring things for a long time. And the beautiful part? The part that makes this all worth it? You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to time the market. You don't have to pick winning stocks. You just have to keep showing up, keep saving, keep investing, and let compound interest do its thing. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Some of you are thinking, but I need to buy a house. Everyone says renting is throwing money away. Here's the truth. That's a myth. Renting is not throwing money away any more than paying for food is throwing money away. You're paying for shelter, you're paying for flexibility, and in many cases, especially in expensive markets, renting and investing, the difference will leave you far wealthier than buying a house and being house poor. The question isn't whether you should rent or buy. The question is what makes sense for your specific situation, your specific market, and your specific financial goals. If buying a modest home and still having plenty of money left over to invest aggressively makes sense, do it. If buying means stretching your budget and having nothing left to invest, rent and build your portfolio instead. The key is this: never let your house be the reason you can't build wealth. Never let your house consume so much of your income that you can't save and invest. Because remember, the house doesn't make you a millionaire in any way that matters. It's the liquid assets that give you freedom. It's the investments that generate income. It's the portfolio that lets you sleep at night knowing you'll be okay no matter what happens. That's the wealth that counts. That's the wealth that changes your life. And that's the wealth that 75% of millionaires don't actually have. So here's what I want you to take away from this. If your goal is to build real wealth, not just look wealthy, focus less on your total net worth and more on your investable net worth. Focus less on what you own and more on what your assets produce. Stop trying to impress people with your house, your car, your watch. Start building a portfolio so strong that you never have to worry about money again, because that's what true financial freedom looks like. It's not about having $1 million house. It's about having $1 million working for you, generating income, giving you options, and letting you live life on your terms. That's the real Millionaire Club. That's the club worth joining. And now you know exactly how different it is from what most people think. If this video changed how you think about wealth, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me what your biggest takeaway was, because we're building a community here of people who see through the BS, who understand what real wealth looks like, and who are committed to building it the right way. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll keep questioning the numbers everyone else accepts and building the life everyone else wishes they had.